The smoke hung thick in the Iron Veterans Clubhouse, curling through shafts of afternoon light that sliced between weathered timber beams. Marcus Stone stood at the head of the long oak table, 70 years etched into every line of his face, his hands resting on the scarred wood with the stillness of a man who had learned patience in frozen Korean foxholes. The Purple Heart ring on his right hand caught the light as 15 younger veterans, men in their 40s and 50s, the Vietnam and Cold War generation, leaned forward in their chairs, coffee mugs forgotten, cigarettes burning down to ash in glass trays. Stone's voice carried the gravel of decades and the weight of authority that never quite left men who had commanded others in combat. The clubhouse around them breathed with history. Black and white photographs lined every wall, faces of brothers frozen in youth, some still alive, most long buried. Vintage motorcycles stood like sentinels along the far wall, chrome gleaming, each one tagged with a small brass plaque bearing a name and years of service. The American flag hung in the corner, its fabric faded but revered, positioned where every man could see it from any seat in the room. Stone had called this gathering with the formality reserved for sacred rituals. Before I stepped down as chapter president, he had told Ghost Anderson 3 days prior, I need to tell them about the last real mission. The young ones need to understand why we exist, what the code actually means when it's tested. Now, watching their faces, Stone saw the hunger for meaning that defined every generation of warriors after the shooting stopped. They had come home to a country that thanked them for their service and then forgot them by dinner. They had found each other in this converted warehouse on the edge of Millbrook, Pennsylvania, creating the brotherhood their nation had failed to provide. But brotherhood required stories. It required the passing of wisdom earned in blood and vindicated in action. Stone reached into his jacket and withdrew a combat knife, its blade worn from decades of use, the handle wrapped in paracord that had grayed with age. He placed it on the table with deliberate care, the metallic sound sharp in the quiet room. This belonged to Master Sergeant David Brooks. His fingers traced the initials carved into the steel. DJB, David James Brooks, Korean War, 50 to 53, Vietnam, 65 to 67, the best Marine I ever served with, and the best friend I ever had. I'm going to tell you how this knife came back to me and why 3 men are in federal prison because of it. Jake Morrison, the youngest among them at 34, Iraq War vintage, with the 1,000-yard stare that never quite faded, shifted in his seat. Colonel, we heard rumors about what happened in '87, the Crawford case, but nobody talks about the details. Stone's jaw tightened, because some of the details aren't pretty, because what we did walked a line between justice and the kind of frontier shit that gets men killed or locked up. But it worked, and it mattered. And before Ghost takes over this chapter, you need to understand that the Iron Veterans Code isn't just words we say over beers. It's a commitment that costs everything when you honor it. He pulled out a worn photograph from his wallet, placing it beside the knife. The image showed a group of young men in leather jackets, standing beside motorcycles that looked new in 1954. In the center, a dark-haired Marine with David Brooks' smile had his arm thrown around a younger Marcus Stone, both grinning with the invincibility of men who had survived what should have killed them. In 1950, at Chosin Reservoir, David Brooks carried me 3 miles through sub-zero hell while Chinese forces tried to kill us both. I took shrapnel in my leg and chest, lost so much blood I was hallucinating. David told jokes the whole way to keep me conscious. Bad jokes, Marine humor, the kind that makes you want a daze just to escape the puns. Quiet laughter rippled through the room, the kind of knowing sound men who had served made when they recognized the truth beneath the humor. When we got stateside, David said I owed him a beer. Stone's voice softened. I bought him 1,000 beers over the next 30 years. It wasn't enough. Nothing I could do would ever be enough to repay what he gave me. But in 1987, I got a chance to try. He paused, letting the silence build, watching their faces. This is about finishing what a fallen brother started. About a 19-year-old girl in a wheelchair who had more courage than men twice her age. About corruption that kills the innocent and hides behind power. And about old warriors proving that we're not just relics collecting dust and telling war stories. We're still operators. We're still dangerous. We're still bound by the code. Stone sat down, the creak of the wooden chair familiar and grounding. It started on a Tuesday morning in October 1987. I got the call I'd been waiting 7 years to receive. The clubhouse seemed to contract around them as Stone's voice shifted into the cadence of memory, drawing them back through time to the moment everything changed. October 13th, 1987. Stone woke at 0600 hours, same as he had every morning for 5 decades. The habit was bone deep, forged in boot camp and reinforced by wars that punished late risers with death. His apartment above the Main Street hardware store was sparse: a bed, a dresser, a desk covered in files and maps, and a window that overlooked Millbrooks, downtown. At 70, Stone maintained the discipline that had kept him alive through Korea and 2 tours in Vietnam. Push-ups, 50 of them. Sit-ups, 75. A shower that started hot and finished cold. By 0630, he was in the alley behind the building, working on the 1954 Harley-Davidson Panhead that had been his daily ride for 33 years. The motorcycle was more than transportation. It was a living connection to the brotherhood he had helped found, a mechanical extension of the code they lived by. Every bolt he turned, every adjustment he made, was a meditation on reliability and precision. In combat, sloppy maintenance got you killed. In civilian life, it was just disrespectful. The morning air carried the crispness of autumn in Pennsylvania, leaves turning gold and red on the maples that lined the residential streets. Millbrook had 17,000 residents, most of them decent people trying to make honest livings in a town where the steel mill had closed and jobs were scarce. Stone had lived here since 1955, watched it grow and then contract, seen families flourish and then struggle. He knew every street, every building, every family that had been here longer than a decade. He also knew its rot. Richard Crawford, mayor for 12 years, had built his political empire on construction contracts and backroom deals. Stone had been investigating him since 1980, since the night David Brooks died on Route 16 in what the sheriff's department called a tragic accident. Black ice, they said, lost control on the curve, went through the guardrail, rolled 4 times down the embankment, dead at the scene. Stone never believed it. David Brooks was too good a driver, too careful, too aware, and the timing was too convenient. David had been asking questions about Crawford Construction's municipal contracts, filing complaints with the State Transportation Board, gathering evidence of safety violations that got people killed. 3 days before his death, David had called Stone, voice tight with controlled fury. "Marcus, I've got him. Documentation witnesses everything we need. I'm taking it to the state board on Monday." David Brooks never made it to Monday. For 7 years, Stone had pursued the truth with the methodical patience of a sniper. He built files, cultivated sources, documented patterns. He watched Crawford's construction projects fail in ways that killed or maimed. He tracked the money, the bribes, the payoffs. He identified Vincent Cross, the man Crawford hired to make problems disappear. But he had no proof, nothing that would survive a courtroom, nothing that would overcome Crawford's political connections and expensive lawyers. The satellite phone in Stone's jacket vibrated at 7:42 hours, the special encrypted line that only 5 people had the number to. Stone wiped grease from his hands and answered on the 3rd ring. "Code Eagle." Raymond Anderson's voice was clipped, urgent, carrying the tension of a man delivering combat intelligence. Ghost. Everyone called him Ghost because of his ability to appear and disappear without sound. Had served with Stone in Korea, survived the same frozen hell at Chosin, carried the same scars inside and out. Stone's pulse didn't quicken. Decades of training held his body in check even as his mind shifted into tactical mode. Code Eagle was the alert they had established years ago, the signal that David Brooks's daughter was in trouble. After David's death, Stone had kept watch over Emma Brooks from a distance, checking on her through proxies, making sure she was safe. When her accident happened 2 years ago, Stone had investigated that too, discovering the same pattern of negligence and calculated risk that marked all of Crawford's work. Report. Ghost's voice was steady but tight. Riverside Diner, Tyler Crawford and 2 friends cornering Emma Brooks. Frank Russo and the new kid, Turner, trying to keep it from escalating. "But it's going bad, Marcus." Tyler put hands on her wheelchair. "This isn't just bullying anymore. Stone was already moving, phone cradled against his shoulder as he grabbed his leather jacket and the keys to the panhead. How long ago? 10 minutes. I'm watching from my truck across the street. Tyler just knocked her breakfast onto the floor. She threw water in his face. Now he's got both hands on her wheelchair, jerking it around. Marcus, this is going to turn into assault if someone doesn't intervene. Assemble the chapter. Full turnout. Riverside Diner in 20 minutes. Ghost's acknowledgement was a grunt. We're going to make a statement. We're going to remind certain people that David Brooks's daughter is under our protection and that the Iron veterans don't tolerate bullies, especially not ones whose fathers are corrupt politicians. Stone ended the call and swung onto the panhead, the engine roaring to life with a throaty rumble that echoed off the brick buildings. The motorcycle was a weapon as much as transportation, its arrival a declaration. As he pulled onto Main Street, his mind was already running tactical calculations. Tyler Crawford was 19, arrogant, protected by his father's power. He had been bullying Emma Brooks since high school, their rivalry dating back to some slight Stone didn't care about. What mattered was that Tyler represented everything wrong with Millbrook. Entitlement, cruelty, the belief that power insulated you from consequences. The ride to the diner took 12 minutes, Stone pushing the speed limit but not breaking it. Drawing Sheriff's attention would complicate things, and Sheriff Carl Morris was Crawford's creature through and through. As Stone navigated the familiar streets, he passed the town square where a bronze statue of a generic Union soldier stood watch over the war memorial. Bronze plaques listed the names of Millbrook's dead from every American conflict since the Civil War. David Brooks's name was there, added posthumously with full military honors because the town didn't know his death was murder. The anger that Stone kept locked down most days rose like bile. 7 years of watching Crawford prosper while David rotted in the ground. 7 years of Crawford's son tormenting David's daughter. 7 years of corruption flourishing because good men did nothing. Today that ended. The parking lot of Riverside Diner held 8 vehicles when Stone arrived at 0812 hours. Through the large front windows, he could see the situation unfolding like a scene from a play he had watched too many times, the powerful preying on the vulnerable, bystanders frozen by fear or indifference, the machinery of injustice grinding forward unchecked. Emma Brooks sat in her wheelchair near the corner booth, her face defiant, but her body language betraying fear. Tyler Crawford loomed over her, one hand still gripping the wheelchair's handle. 2 young men flanked Tyler, both athletic, both wearing the colors of Millbrook High's football team. Frank Russo, the diner's owner, stood near the kitchen door with a carving knife visible in his hand. The knife wasn't brandished as a weapon, but the message was clear. The old Marine was prepared to defend his customers if necessary. Connor Hayes, the new waiter who Stone knew was actually former Army Ranger Jake Turner, working undercover, positioned himself between Tyler and Emma, his posture deceptively casual, but his weight balanced on the balls of his feet. Ghost's pickup truck sat across the street, the old man visible behind the wheel, phone pressed to his ear, coordinating the response Stone had ordered. Within minutes, the rumble of motorcycle engines became audible, growing louder as the Iron veterans converged on the diner from multiple directions. Stone waited, letting the sound build, letting the psychological pressure mount. The first bike to arrive was Thomas Reynolds's 1966 Harley Electra Glide, the former Air Force major pulling into the parking lot with military precision. Then came Phil Torres in his vest covered with patches from Lebanon and Grenada, followed by William Martinez, whose son had died on a Crawford construction bridge 5 years ago. One by one they came, 12 veterans ranging in age from 62 to 76, each one a chapter in America's history of foreign wars, each one bound to the others by codes stronger than law. They dismounted in unison, an unconscious synchronization born from decades of military service. No words were exchanged, no questions asked. Ghost had transmitted the situation and they had responded, leaving jobs and errands and morning coffee to answer the call. Because that was the code. Because David Brooks would have done the same for any of their children. Because brotherhood meant showing up when it mattered. Stone waited until all 12 were assembled in formation behind him, leather jackets gleaming in the October sun, the Iron veterans patch visible on every back, an eagle clutching a motorcycle chain, wings spread against an American flag. Then he dismounted and walked toward the diner entrance, his brothers falling into step behind him, with the practiced precision of men who had once marched into battle together. The bell above the door chimed with absurd cheerfulness as Stone entered. Every head in the diner turned. The elderly couple in the booth near the window, the businessman reading his newspaper at the counter, the young mother trying to quiet her toddler, and Tyler Crawford, his hands still gripping Emma's wheelchair, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment from the water Emma had thrown. Stone didn't hurry. He walked with the measured pace of a man who had all the time in the world and the absolute certainty that he controlled the situation. His boots struck the checkered linoleum with steady rhythm. Behind him, 12 pairs of boots created a drumbeat of arrival. The diner's ambient noise, clinking silverware, quiet conversation, the sizzle of the griddle died away as the veterans filed in, positioning themselves with tactical awareness around the exits and sightlines. Tyler's eyes widened as recognition dawned. He knew who Marcus Stone was. Every kid in Millbrook knew about Colonel Stone, the decorated war hero who ran the motorcycle club, the man whose reputation for principled violence preceded him like a shadow. Tyler's grip on Emma's wheelchair loosened. Stone stopped 5 feet from Tyler, close enough to dominate, far enough to avoid proximate threat. He said nothing for a long moment, just looked at the boy with the flat, assessing gaze he had once used on enemy combatants. Tyler was soft despite his athletic build, privileged despite his working-class affectations. His expensive sneakers were pristine. His designer jacket probably cost more than most Millbrook families spent on groceries in a month. Everything about him screamed entitlement. "Son, you're in a position you don't want to be in." Stone's voice was conversational, almost friendly, which made it more dangerous. Men who had served under him recognized the tone. It was the voice that preceded violence, the calm before orders that got people killed. Tyler tried to salvage his dignity. "This is a private matter, old man. You should—" Stone raised one hand, palm out, and Tyler's words died. The gesture was economical, casual, but carried the weight of absolute authority. Behind Stone, the 12 veterans stood in relaxed, ready positions, arms crossed or hands in pockets. But their eyes tracked every movement in the diner with the vigilance of men who had survived ambushes. "I'm going to give you some information, son, and what you do with it will determine how the next 5 minutes unfold." Stone's hand lowered. "Your father is Richard Crawford, mayor of Millbrook. He served in the Army for 8 months in 1968, received a general discharge after disciplinary issues, came home and built a construction empire on municipal contracts, married into the Morrison family money, used that platform to launch a political career based on claims of military service he didn't actually complete." Tyler's face reddened. "My father was honorably— Your father was kicked out for conduct unbecoming an officer." Stone's voice hardened. "I know because I was a captain in the same command. I read the paperwork. He falsified equipment reports, took bribes from local contractors, and generally proved himself to be exactly the kind of officer who gets good men killed. The Army gave him a general discharge to avoid the scandal of a court-martial. He's been lying about it for 20 years. The words hit Tyler like physical blows. Stone could see the boy's worldview cracking, the foundations of his arrogance undermining themselves in real time. "Now," Stone continued, his voice softening to something almost gentle, "you've got your hands on the wheelchair of a young woman whose father was one of the finest Marines I ever knew. David Brooks earned his rank through courage and competence. He saved my life and the lives of countless others. He died 7 years ago in what was called an accident, but what I believe was murder. His daughter Emma is sitting here trying to have breakfast, and you're terrorizing her because you're angry about a drawing she made of you when you were both children." Tyler's hands fell away from the wheelchair completely. I wasn't going to hurt her." "You put hands on her chair." Stone stepped closer, his voice dropping to a register that only Tyler could hear. "You violated her space, her autonomy, her dignity. You used your size and your father's power to intimidate someone you perceived as weak. That makes you a bully and a coward. And bullies and cowards are the enemy of everything men like me spend our lives fighting." Tyler backed up a step, then another. His 2 friends had already retreated toward the door, recognizing a losing situation when they saw it. The diner remained silent, everyone watching the confrontation with the fascinated horror of witnesses to a public humiliation. Stone turned away from Tyler, dismissing him, and looked at Emma Brooks. She was 19 now, though Stone remembered her as the 12-year-old girl at David's funeral, trying to be brave while her world collapsed. The wheelchair was a recent addition, result of an accident 2 years ago that Stone had also investigated. Route 16 again, the same stretch of road where her father died. The same guardrails that failed due to substandard installation by Crawford Construction. Miss Brooks, Stone's voice gentled further. Your father was my brother in every way that matters. I apologize that you had to experience this harassment. Emma's eyes were David's eyes, green, intelligent, burning with controlled fire. She studied Stone with the same assessing gaze her father had used, and Stone felt a ghost of recognition in his chest. You knew my father, it wasn't a question, but Stone answered anyway. We served together in Korea. He saved my life at Chosin Reservoir, carried me 3 miles through enemy fire when I was bleeding out. After the war, we founded the Iron Veterans together. He was one of our first members. Emma's expression shifted from wariness to hunger for information. My mother never told me about any motorcycle club. Your mother had her reasons. Stone pulled a worn photograph from his wallet, the same image he would show to the younger veterans years later. This is from 1954. Your father and I, plus 10 other Korea veterans who couldn't quite adjust to civilian life. We found we needed each other. The brotherhood we built in war didn't have to end just because the shooting stopped. Emma took the photograph, her fingers trembling slightly. Her father looked so young in the image, barely more than a boy despite the combat experience, etched into his posture. She traced his face with one finger, and Stone saw the grief and loss that she carried like a weight. Behind them, Tyler Crawford slipped out the door with his friends, the bell chiming their retreat. The other diners slowly returned to their meals. The crisis passed, normal life resuming with the resilience that characterized small-town America. Frank Russo approached from the kitchen, the carving knife now gone, a fresh plate of pancakes in his hands. On the house, Frank set the plate in front of Emma. Any daughter of Jim Brooks eats free in my diner. Connor Hayes, who Stone knew was actually Jake Turner, former Army Ranger and one of David's trainees at Fort Benning, poured coffee for the assembled veterans. His cover was solid. Frank had hired him a month ago at Stone's request, positioning an operator inside the diner where Emma frequently ate. Jake had David Brooks' instinct for protection and the training to back it up. Stone pulled out the chair across from Emma, sitting without invitation. The other veterans dispersed through the diner, taking up positions that gave them clear sightlines to the entrance and surrounding area. They ordered coffee and pie, playing the role of customers, but every one of them remained tactically aware. There's a conversation we need to have, Stone said quietly, about your father's death, about your accident, about patterns that I've been tracking for 7 years. Emma set down the photograph carefully. What kind of patterns? The kind that get people killed when they threaten powerful interests. Stone's hands rested flat on the table, his purple heart ring catching the light. Your father was investigating Richard Crawford's construction company before he died. He had evidence of fraud, bribery, safety violations. 3 days before his fatal accident, he told me he was taking that evidence to the State Transportation Board. Emma's face went pale. You think the mayor killed my father? I know he did. I can't prove it yet. But I know. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with implication and consequence. Emma's breakfast sat untouched, steam rising from the pancakes, syrup pooling on the plate. Around them, the diner continued its morning rhythm, oblivious to the weight of what was being discussed. Your accident 2 years ago. Stone leaned forward. Route 16, the same road where your father died. The guardrail failed when your car went off the road. You were driving at the speed limit, conditions were dry, you hadn't been drinking. The investigation ruled driver error somehow. Because I'm in a wheelchair, Emma's voice carried bitterness. They assumed I was distracted or incompetent. The guardrail that failed was installed by Crawford Construction. Stone pulled a manila folder from inside his jacket, spreading documents on the table. I've had engineers review the specifications versus the actual installation. The posts were placed 10 feet apart instead of the required 6 feet. The anchoring was insufficient. The metal gauge was below standard. That guardrail was guaranteed to fail under stress. It was only a matter of time before someone went through it. Emma stared at the documents, her hands beginning to shake. You're saying my accident wasn't an accident. I'm saying it was inevitable given Crawford's negligence. Whether he specifically targeted you, or whether you were just unlucky enough to hit that particular section of defective railing, I can't yet determine. But the man responsible for crippling you is the same man who killed your father. Tears streaked Emma's face, but her voice remained steady. What do you want from me? Stone gathered the documents, returning them to the folder. I want your permission to finish what your father started. I want to expose Crawford's corruption, bring him to justice. Make sure no other family suffers what yours has suffered. But I need you to be willing to testify, to put your face and your story to this evidence. I need you to be brave, the way your father was brave. Emma wiped her tears with the back of her hand, jaw set with determination. Stone recognized from 30 years of watching David Brooks face impossible odds. What do I need to do? Come to the clubhouse this afternoon. Stone stood, signaling the other veterans to prepare departure. I'll show you what we've gathered, introduce you to the men who served with your father, and lay out the plan. This won't be easy, and it won't be safe. Crawford will fight back. But we're Iron veterans. We protect our own. And you're one of ours now, whether you knew it or not. Emma nodded once, decisive. What time? 1400 hours, 2 o'clock civilian time. Stone allowed himself a small smile. The address is in the phone book under Iron Veterans Motorcycle Club. You can't miss it. We're the warehouse with 30 bikes parked outside. As the veterans filed out of the diner, Stone paused at the door and looked back. Frank Russo stood behind the counter, Jake Turner was refilling coffee, and Emma sat at her booth studying the photograph of her young father. The scene looked peaceful, almost normal, but Stone knew better. They had just declared war on the most powerful man in Millbrook, and wars had a way of consuming everything in their path. Outside, the October sun climbed higher in a cloudless sky. The 12 motorcycles fired up in sequence, engines creating a symphony of American engineering and defiant noise. Stone threw his leg over the panhead, feeling the machine's vibration through his body, the familiar sensation grounding him in the present moment. Ghost pulled his bike alongside Stone's. You think she'll show? She'll show. Stone's hands gripped the throttle. She's got David's stubbornness, and she wants answers. That combination will overcome her fear, and if Crawford moves against her, then we move faster. Stone gunned the engine, get everyone to the clubhouse by 1300 hours. Full briefing, weapons check, tactical planning. We go to DEFCON 2 as of now. The motorcycles pulled out in formation, a rolling declaration of presence as they thundered through Millbrook's quiet streets. Residents paused on sidewalks to watch, some waving, others frowning. The Iron veterans had a complicated relationship with the town, respected as war heroes, viewed with suspicion as outsiders who refused to conform, tolerated because they generally kept to themselves. That tolerance was about to be tested. Stone's mind was already 3 moves ahead, running scenarios and contingencies. Crawford would have heard about the diner incident within the hour. Tyler would tell his father, probably exaggerating the threat, definitely mentioning Emma's interaction with Stone. Crawford was smart enough to recognize the danger. If Emma allied with the Iron veterans, his past sins would come under scrutiny he had spent years avoiding. The question was how Crawford would respond. Would he try intimidation, legal harassment, physical violence through proxies? Each option had tactical implications that Stone needed to prepare for. The clubhouse came into view, the converted warehouse standing solid and unremarkable among the light industrial buildings on the town's eastern edge. The Iron veterans had purchased it in 1956, converting the interior into meeting space, workshop, and shrine to fallen brothers. 30 motorcycles in various states of repair filled the garage bay. The walls displayed decades of military memorabilia, unit patches, medals, photographs, captured enemy weapons mounted as trophies. The American flag hung prominently, flanked by the flags of the Marine Corps, Army, Navy, and Air Force. Stone dismounted and killed the engine, sudden silence rushing in to fill the space. The other veterans gathered around him in the parking lot, faces expectant. Status report. Stone's command voice emerged without conscious thought, the tone that had once directed artillery strikes and troop movements. Reynolds, what's our current strength? Thomas Reynolds, former Air Force major and the chapter's executive officer, consulted a small notebook. 42 active members, average age 68. 26 are combat veterans with Korea or Vietnam experience. 16 served in peacetime or saw limited action in Lebanon, Grenada, or elsewhere. All are in reasonable health for our age. We've got 14 former officers, 28 enlisted, split evenly between Marines, Army, and Air Force. Weapons? Personal sidearms for most members, hunting rifles for about 30, shotguns common. Reynolds snapped the notebook shut. Nothing illegal, nothing we can't justify for home defense or sport, but we're well armed for a civilian organization. Stone nodded. Communications? Ghost stepped forward, pulling out one of the bulky Motorola Dynatac mobile phones that cost more than most cars. We've got 5 secure lines on the cell network, another 10 members with CB radios, and everyone has access to landlines. I can get a message to every member within 30 minutes if needed. Medical? Dr. Elena Reyes emerged from the clubhouse, still wearing scrubs from her shift at Millbrook General Hospital. She was 58, former Army nurse with tours in Vietnam and Germany, the only female member of the Iron Veterans and one of the most respected. 3 members with combat medic training, she reported. I can set up a field hospital here if necessary. Trauma supplies are stocked and current. Intelligence? Ghost again. I've got sources in the sheriff's department, county records office, and state police, plus the usual network of veterans in adjacent counties who keep us informed. Right now, Crawford doesn't know we're mobilizing, but that'll change once Tyler talks to him. Stone absorbed the information, his mind organizing it into tactical frameworks. Legal status? All members are legally clean except for minor traffic violations. Reynolds gestured at the assembled veterans. We've been careful to stay within the law. Our tax status is solid as a nonprofit veterans organization. Crawford can't easily target us through legal channels. That's good, because Crawford's going to try every angle to shut us down once he realizes we're the threat. Stone walked toward the clubhouse entrance, the others following. Inside. War room, full briefing in 10 minutes. I want maps, documents, everything we've compiled on Crawford spread out and ready for Miss Brooks when she arrives. The clubhouse interior was exactly what Emma Brooks would see when she rolled through the door at 1400 hours, a shrine to American military service and the bonds forged in war's crucible. Stone had spent 7 years preparing for this moment, gathering evidence, building the case, waiting for the right catalyst. Emma's arrival at the diner this morning, her confrontation with Tyler, the public nature of the bullying, it was the opening he needed. The main room held a large conference table surrounded by mismatched chairs. Maps of Millbrook and surrounding counties covered one wall, various locations marked with colored pins. Filing cabinets lined another wall, each drawer labeled with different aspects of the Crawford investigation. Construction projects, financial records, political connections, accidents and incidents, witnesses. A third wall displayed the photographs of fallen brothers, each one a story of sacrifice and service. Stone moved to the head of the table, waiting as the veterans took their seats. When everyone was settled, coffee poured, attention focused, he began. 7 years ago, David Brooks died on Route 16 in what was officially ruled an accident. Black ice, they said. Lost control, went through the guardrail, rolled down the embankment. Dead at scene. Stone's voice was flat, emotionless. The only way he could talk about David's death without rage consuming him. I didn't believe it then. I don't believe it now. He pulled out a folder from the filing cabinet marked Brooks David Fatal Accident and spread the contents on the table. Police report, accident reconstruction, weather data, witness statements. Every piece of paper David's death had generated, Stone had obtained through legal channels and less legal means. David was investigating Crawford Construction at the time of his death. He had filed complaints with the State Transportation Board about substandard work on municipal projects. He had documented safety violations, interviewed witnesses, gathered evidence. 3 days before he died, he told me he had everything needed to bring down Crawford. He was going to deliver it to state authorities on Monday, October 19th, 1980. Ghost leaned forward. David died Friday night, October 16th, exactly. Stone pointed at the police report. The accident occurred at 2147 hours on a straight section of Route 16 that David had driven thousands of times. Weather was clear, road was dry, David's blood alcohol was zero, tox screen was clean, vehicle maintenance was perfect. David kept his truck in immaculate condition. The accident reconstruction shows he was doing exactly the speed limit when he hit the guardrail. So what caused the crash? Reynolds asked. The guardrail failed before impact, not because of it. Stone pulled out engineering analysis he had commissioned 3 years ago, paying from his own pocket for experts to review every detail. The support posts were cut partially through, weakened so they'd collapse under moderate stress. The cuts were hidden on the side facing away from the road. When David's truck made contact, probably because he swerved to avoid something in the road, maybe a deer or deliberately placed obstacle, the rail gave way immediately. No protection. Straight down the embankment. The room absorbed this in silence. These were men who had seen combat, who understood the mechanics of violence and death. They knew sabotage when they heard it described. Who did the cutting? Torres asked. I can't prove it, but I believe Vincent Cross. Stone opened another folder. Cross is a former Marine Scout sniper, served 72 to 75, received a Silver Star for actions in Cambodia that officially never happened. After discharge, he went private sector. Security consulting, they call it. I call it contract killing. He's been linked to 12 unsolved deaths across Pennsylvania and Ohio, but he's too good to leave evidence. And Crawford hired him? Crawford has paid Cross approximately $350,000 over the past 15 years, documented through shell companies and offshore accounts. Stone spread financial records across the table. Every time Crawford has a problem, a witness who won't be bought, a competitor who won't back down, an investigator who gets too close, Cross handles it. Sometimes it's intimidation, sometimes it's blackmail, and sometimes people die in accidents. Dr. Reyes studied the documents with a physician's analytical eye. How did you get Crawford's financial records? Stone allowed himself a cold smile. I have friends in places Crawford doesn't know about. Veterans who work in banks, law offices, county government, men who remember David Brooks and what he stood for. When I started asking questions, doors opened. In Emma's accident, Jake Turner spoke for the first time since entering the clubhouse. 2 years ago, same road, same kind of guardrail failure. Are you saying Crawford targeted her specifically? Stone pulled out the final folder, this one marked Brooks Emma Accident Analysis. I'm saying Crawford built that section of Route 16 using the same substandard methods he's used everywhere. Whether Emma was specifically targeted or just unlucky, I don't know yet. But the result is the same. David Brooks' daughter is in a wheelchair because Richard Crawford valued profit over safety. He spread accident scene photographs across the table. Emma's car, a 1985 Honda Civic, had rolled 4 times after going through the failed guardrail. The fact that she survived at all was miraculous. The fact that she would never walk again was tragedy compounded by corruption. I've had 3 independent engineers review the guardrail specifications versus actual installation. Stone pointed at technical diagrams. Posts spaced at 10 feet instead of 6. Improper gauge steel. Insufficient anchoring depth. That guardrail was guaranteed to fail under stress. It wasn't a question of if, but when. How many other accidents have there been on Crawford projects? Reynolds was already pulling out a legal pad, taking notes. 15 documented incidents over 12 years. Stone moved to the wall map, pointing at colored pins. 3 fatalities. 8 serious injuries. 4 minor injuries. Every single one on roads, bridges, or public infrastructure built by Crawford Construction. Every single one showing evidence of substandard materials or improper installation. Martinez stood, moving to the map, his finger finding a green pin. My son, Miguel. Bridge over Silver Creek collapsed during spring flooding 5 years ago. Miguel was driving across when it gave way. They said it was unprecedented water levels. But the bridge had been built 6 months earlier by Crawford, had already shown stress fractures. State inspectors signed off on it anyway. because Crawford bribes inspectors. Ghost pulled out another folder, this one thick with photocopied documents. We've documented payments to 7 different state and county inspectors over 10 years. Cash payments, gifts, favors. In return, they sign approval forms for projects that don't meet code. The scope of the corruption was staggering. It wasn't just 1 or 2 bad projects. It was systemic fraud spanning more than a decade, affecting dozens of construction projects, endangering thousands of Millbrook residents. And at the center of it all sat Richard Crawford, mayor and upstanding citizen, protected by political connections and the assumption that men of his status didn't commit crimes. "What's the plan?" Torres asked the question they were all thinking. Stone returned to his seat at the head of the table. "Emma Brooks is coming here at 1400 hours. I'm going to show her everything we've compiled. If she agrees to be our public face, to testify about her accident and her father's death, we go to the state police and the federal prosecutor. We bypass local authorities entirely. Sheriff Morris is on Crawford's payroll, as are 3 county commissioners and at least 2 judges. And if Emma refuses?" Reynolds was playing devil's advocate, testing the plan for weaknesses. "Then we continue gathering evidence until we have enough to move without her. But it'll take longer and carry less impact." The power of this case is in the human story. A war hero killed, his daughter crippled, a pattern of negligence that destroyed families. Emma's face and voice make that real, in a way documents never can. Dupree Reyes frowned. "We're putting a 19-year-old girl in the crosshairs of a murderer. We're giving her the chance to finish what her father started." Stone's voice hardened. "David died fighting Crawford. Emma has the right to continue that fight if she chooses. Our job is to protect her while she does it." Ghost checked his watch. "It's 12:45 hours. She'll be here in an hour and 15 minutes. What do we do about Crawford in the meantime?" "Nothing." Stone stood, signaling the briefing's end. "We wait. We let him make the first move after Tyler tells him about the diner. Crawford thinks he's smart, thinks he can control situations. Let him feel like he's responding to us. It'll make him predictable." The veterans dispersed to various tasks, checking equipment, reviewing documents, making calls to activate their network. Stone remained at the table, staring at David Brooks's accident file, the photographs of his brother's destroyed truck, the dry language of official reports that turned murder into paperwork. His satellite phone vibrated, a text message from an unknown number. Stone opened it, reading 3 sentences that changed everything. "Crawford knows about the diner. He's activating Vincent Cross. The target is Emma Brooks." Stone was already moving, shouting orders as he crossed the clubhouse. "Ghost, get 3 men to Emma's location right now. Connor's already with her at the diner, but he needs backup. Torres, activate the phone tree, full alert status. Reynolds, I want eyes on Crawford's office and home within 10 minutes. The peaceful afternoon exploded into coordinated chaos as the Iron veterans mobilized with the efficiency of a military unit under attack. This was what they had trained for, what their brotherhood existed to handle. The moment when plans met reality and lives hung in the balance. Stone grabbed his leather jacket and helmet, mind racing through tactical options. If Crawford had activated Vincent Cross, Emma was in immediate danger. Cross didn't waste time. He identified targets, planned approaches, executed with lethal precision. The diner was too public for a direct attack, but the road between the diner and Emma's home offered opportunities. Or her house itself, quiet and isolated, while her mother worked night shifts at the hospital. Ghost appeared at Stone's elbow, phone pressed to his ear. "Connor reports Emma left the diner 20 minutes ago. She's heading home to tell her mother about this afternoon's meeting. Connor's following at a distance in his truck. Get him on the line." Stone's hands moved through pre-combat checks he hadn't performed in years. Weapons secured, phone charged, emergency numbers programmed. When Ghost handed him the phone, Stone's voice was pure command. "Connor, Stone. What's your situation?" Jake Turner's voice came through, calm but alert with the readiness of a ranger who had operated in hostile territory. "I'm 3 cars behind her van. No tail that I can detect, but I'm not ruling out parallel surveillance. She's taking Route 16 home, ETA to her residence in 12 minutes. Route 16, of course. The road that had killed her father and crippled her. If Vincent Cross was hunting Emma Brooks, he would use the location symbolism. Predators often return to successful hunting grounds. Do not let her out of your sight. Stone was already moving toward his motorcycle. I'm en route with Ghost and Martinez. We'll set up overwatch positions around her house. If Cross makes a move, we take him. And if he doesn't, then we wait. Stone threw his leg over the panhead. But one way or another, this ends today. The engine roared to life, Ghost and Martinez flanking him on their own bikes. Three veterans, average age 69, preparing to face a professional killer in defense of a girl they had sworn to protect. The odds were not good. The stakes could not be higher. The code demanded nothing less. They accelerated into Millbrook's afternoon traffic, three old warriors riding toward a confrontation 7 years in the making, the rumble of their engines a declaration that some battles were worth fighting no matter the cost. The war for Millbrook's soul had begun, and the Iron Veterans would see it through to the end or die trying, because that was the code, because David Brooks deserved justice, because Emma Brooks deserved the chance her father never got, and because sometimes old men needed to prove they were still dangerous. Emma Brooks's house sat at the end of Maple Street in one of Millbrook's older neighborhoods, where working-class families had raised children through decades of relative prosperity before the steel mill closed and jobs evaporated. The two-story colonial needed paint, its white siding gone gray with years, but the lawn was neat and the garden showed Patricia Brooks's attempts to maintain dignity through appearance. A wooden ramp led to the front door, installed 2 years ago after Emma's accident. The bright pressure-treated lumber incongruous against the home's weathered facade. Stone arrived first, killing the Panhead's engine 3 houses down and approaching on foot. The tactical assessment came automatically. Corner lot with good sight lines, minimal cover for an attacker, neighbors close enough to hear gunshots. Emma's accessible van sat in the driveway, driver's door still open, suggesting she had just arrived. No other vehicles were visible, no obvious threats, but Stone's instincts screamed warning. Connor's pickup truck rolled past, Jake Turner visible behind the wheel, his nod barely perceptible as he continued to the next block. Good operational security, staying mobile, maintaining surveillance without advertising presence. Ghost and Martinez took up positions covering the house's rear and side approaches, their motorcycles parked separately to avoid clustering. Stone's phone vibrated, a text from Torres. Sheriff Morris dispatched to Emma's address. Complaint filed by Crawford about threatening behavior at diner. Morris ETA 8 minutes. The timing was too precise to be coincidence. Crawford was using legal harassment as cover, flooding the zone with official presence to make any protective action by the Iron Veterans look like aggression. Smart tactics from a man who understood how to weaponize institutional power. Stone texted back. Delay him, traffic stop, flat tire, anything. Need 15 minutes clear. Torres's response came immediately. On it. State police friend will pull Morris over for broken tail light. The front door opened and Emma wheeled herself onto the ramp, phone pressed to her ear, her face animated with conversation. Stone couldn't hear the words, but recognized the body language. Excitement, urgency, the energy of someone who had just discovered answers to questions that had haunted them for years. She was probably calling her mother at the hospital, telling Patricia about the Iron Veterans, about Stone's revelation that David Brooks had been investigating Crawford. Movement in Stone's peripheral vision, a sedan with tinted windows rolling slowly down Maple Street, driver's face obscured. Stone's hand moved to the weapon concealed in his jacket. A Colt 1911 he had carried since Korea, maintained with religious precision, loaded with hollow point rounds that would stop any threat. The sedan continued past without slowing, probably just a resident, but Stone's heart rate had already elevated, adrenaline flooding his system with the familiar pre-combat cocktail of chemicals. Getting old meant the body recovered more slowly from stress, but the warrior's instinct never diminished. Stone had faced death so many times that fear had evolved into something else, acceptance combined with determination. He would protect Emma Brooks or die trying. Those were the only two outcomes that mattered. Emma finished her call and turned toward the van, reaching for the wheelchair lift controls. Stone stepped out from cover, making himself visible, not wanting to startle her. Miss Brooks! Emma's head snapped around, hand dropping to the wheelchair's armrest in a defensive posture before recognition dawned. Colonel Stone, you scared me. I apologize. He approached slowly, hands visible, posture non-threatening. But we need to talk before you go inside. Her expression shifted from surprise to concern. What's wrong? Stone reached her position on the ramp, keeping his body between her and the street. I received intelligence that Crawford has activated a contractor to address what he perceives as the threat you represent. The man he typically uses for such work is extremely dangerous. I've positioned my people to provide security, but you need to understand the situation has escalated. Emma's face paled. You're saying he's going to kill me? Like he killed my father? I'm saying he's considering his options, and one of those options is violence. Stone's voice remained calm, factual. My assessment is that Crawford will try intimidation first. Legal harassment, social pressure, professional consequences for your mother. But if those fail, or if he believes you've already aligned with us against him, he may move to more permanent solutions. The fear in Emma's eyes was real and justified, but beneath it, Stone saw the same steel he had observed in the diner. This girl was David Brooks's daughter in every way that mattered. She would be afraid but not paralyzed by fear. She would calculate risks and make decisions. She would fight. What do you want me to do? Her voice was steadier than her hands. Right now, go inside. Pack a bag with essentials for 3 days. Call your mother and tell her to do the same. I'm moving both of you to a safe location until we can neutralize the immediate threat. Emma shook her head. My mother won't leave her patients. She's got 3 critical cases in ICU. Then she stays under guard at the hospital. Dr. Racist is on staff there. She'll coordinate security without being obvious about it. But you're coming with me to the clubhouse where we can control access and protect you properly. I'm supposed to meet you there at 2 o'clock anyway. The situation has changed. Stone checked his watch. 17 hours. Sheriff Morris will arrive here in approximately 6 minutes. He'll claim he's investigating a complaint about threatening behavior at the diner. It's theater designed to establish a paper trail that makes you look unstable and us look like aggressors. We're not playing that game. So I'm just supposed to disappear? Emma's tone carried anger now, frustration at being pushed into choices not of her making. What happens to my life, my art classes, my therapy appointments? Your father asked the same questions 7 years ago. Stone's bluntness was calculated. He chose to fight Crawford anyway because some things matter more than convenience. You can make the same choice, or you can roll the dice that Crawford won't have you killed. But make no mistake, if you stay visible and vulnerable, you're betting your life on the restraint of a man who has already murdered at least once. The words hit like physical blows, but Emma didn't flinch. How long? 48 to 72 hours if things go according to plan. Stone gestured toward the house. Pack now. Questions later. We've got 5 minutes before Morris arrives, and I don't want to give him ammunition by being caught here. Emma wheeled toward the door, her movements economical despite the obvious fear. Stone followed, scanning the street for threats. Ghost's motorcycle was visible 2 blocks away, positioned to intercept anyone approaching from the south. Martinez had disappeared behind the house, probably taking a position covering the back entrance. Connor's truck circled the block in a continuous patrol pattern. Inside, the house smelled of old coffee and Patricia Brooks's vanilla candles. Family photographs covered every surface. Emma as a child in various gymnastics poses, David in uniform across different decades, Patricia young and beautiful before grief had carved lines into her face. The living room was clean but worn, furniture dating from the early 70s, carpet threadbare in high-traffic areas. This was a home where money had always been tight, but love had been abundant. Emma navigated the narrow hallways with practiced ease, reaching her bedroom in seconds. Stone remained in the living room, watching the street through curtains, phone in hand ready to alert the team if Morris appeared early. The minutes stretched, each one feeling longer than the last, the tension building like pressure before a storm. How do I know I can trust you? Emma's voice came from her bedroom, the question carrying through the open door. Stone considered his response carefully. Trust needed to be earned, not demanded, And Emma had every reason to be cautious about strange men claiming to protect her. You don't. Not yet. Stone kept his eyes on the street. All you know is what I've told you, and I could be lying about everything. Your father could have been a coward instead of a hero. Crawford could be innocent. The accident that put you in that wheelchair could be exactly what it appears. Bad luck and driver error. So why should I come with you? Because your gut is telling you I'm not lying. Stone turned from the window to look at her, seeing her framed in the bedroom doorway, a duffel bag half packed on her lap. Because what I've shown you makes sense of things that never quite added up. Because you've felt for 2 years that your accident wasn't explained properly. And for 7 years, you've wondered if your father's death was really just black ice and bad timing. Emma zipped the duffel closed, face unreadable. My mother always said Dad was too careful a driver to lose control on that road. Your mother was right. He was the best driver I knew. Stone checked his watch, 3 minutes until Morris's arrival. Combat veterans develop almost supernatural awareness of time, and Stone could feel the deadline approaching like physical pressure. Are you ready? Emma hooked the duffel to her wheelchair and rolled toward the door. One condition. When we get to your clubhouse, I want to know everything. No evasions, no protecting me from hard truths. If I'm betting my life on you, I deserve complete information. Agreed. Stone opened the front door, checking the street one final time. Ghost, we're moving. What's your status? The response crackled through Stone's radio. All clear south and west. Martinez reports clear north and east. Connor is positioned to run interference if Morris arrives early. You've got a window. They moved quickly, Stone helping Emma down the ramp while maintaining situational awareness of approaching vehicles. The neighborhood remained quiet, just another Tuesday afternoon in a working-class suburb where most residents were at jobs they couldn't afford to leave. The few people visible, a woman gardening 2 houses down, a teenage boy washing a car across the street, barely glanced at them. Stone's panhead waited where he had left it, and Emma eyed the motorcycle with obvious concern. I can't ride on that. You can sit behind me if we stabilize your legs. Stone was already pulling bungee cords from the bike's storage. Done it before with wounded soldiers who couldn't grip with their knees. Not comfortable but functional for short distances. Where's my wheelchair? Connor's got a truck. He'll transport it and your van to the clubhouse. Stone worked quickly, creating a harness system that would secure Emma to his back. Trust me, I've carried people through worse conditions than a 3-mile ride through Pennsylvania suburbs. Emma hesitated, weighing options, calculating risks. Then she nodded once, decisive. Okay, but if I fall off and get hurt worse, I'm suing you. If you fall off, I've already failed you. Stone helped her from the wheelchair to the motorcycle, feeling how light she was, how the muscle mass she had carried as a gymnast had atrophied after 2 years of paralysis. The fragility of her body contrasted sharply with the strength in her grip as she wrapped her arms around his waist. The panhead's engine roared to life, and Stone felt Emma flinch at the volume. Then they were moving, accelerating smoothly, Ghost and Martinez falling into formation on either side. 3 motorcycles traveling together drew attention, but not the kind that triggered alarm. Just veterans out for a ride on a nice October afternoon. Stone's radio crackled. Morris just got pulled over on Route 16. Torres reports the stop will last at least 10 minutes. You're clear. The clubhouse was only 3 miles away, but Stone took a circuitous route, doubling back twice to ensure no tail, checking mirrors constantly for surveillance. The Iron Veterans had enemies beyond Crawford. Rival motorcycle clubs, criminals they had crossed, people who held grudges from old conflicts. Paranoia kept you alive when violence was always one bad decision away. Emma's grip tightened as they leaned into a turn, her body rigid with tension. Stone remembered teaching young Marines to ride, how fear made them stiff and rigidity made them fall. Relax into the movement. Trust the machine and the rider. Fighting it makes you less safe. She didn't respond verbally, but he felt her body loosen fractionally, accepting the motorcycle's rhythm. Good girl. David's daughter was a fast learner. The clubhouse appeared ahead, the warehouse's bulk familiar and welcoming. 20 motorcycles were now parked in formation outside, more members having arrived during Stone's absence. The chapter was mobilizing in full, every veteran who could ride responding to the unspoken call. This was what brotherhood meant. showing up without being asked, standing ready without questioning why. Stone pulled into the lot and killed the engine. Connor's truck was already there, Emma's wheelchair visible in the bed. Ghost and Martinez dismounted, taking up security positions, while Stone helped Emma transfer from the motorcycle to her chair. She moved with practiced efficiency despite obvious fatigue, accepting assistance without surrendering autonomy. The clubhouse door opened, and Dr. Elena Reyes emerged, her presence immediately calming. Emma, I'm Dr. Reyes. I work with your mother at the hospital. She knows you're here and safe. I spoke with her 5 minutes ago. Is she okay? Emma's first thought was for her mother, David Brooks' concern for others manifesting in his daughter. She's worried, but she trusts Colonel Stone. Elena's smile was genuine, warm. Your father saved my life in Vietnam. Did he ever tell you about the field hospital that came under mortar attack? Emma shook her head, hunger for stories about her father evident in her expression. Later. Stone's voice was gentle but firm. Right now we need to get inside, complete the briefing, and establish security protocols. Personal stories can wait until the immediate threat is neutralized. The clubhouse's interior hit Emma like a physical force. The photographs of fallen brothers, the military memorabilia, the flags representing decades of American combat. She stopped just inside the door, taking it all in, her artist's eye cataloging details. Stone watched her process the space, seeing her understand what this place meant to the men who gathered here. This is where my father came. Her voice was soft with wonder. This is where he was himself, not just my dad or my mom's husband. This is where he was a Marine. This is where he was a brother. Stone gestured toward the conference table where 20 veterans now stood in silent respect. These men served with him, fought beside him, mourned him when he died. And now they're ready to fight for his daughter. Emma wheeled slowly down the center aisle between the assembled veterans, each one nodding as she passed, their weathered faces showing respect and determination. These were not young men. Their average age exceeded 65. Many carried visible scars from old wounds. Some moved with the stiffness of arthritis or damaged joints. But every single one stood at attention, spine straight, shoulders back, military bearing maintained despite decades of civilian life. At the conference table, Stone had spread out everything: maps, documents, photographs, evidence compiled over 7 years of investigation. Emma approached the display with the wariness of someone expecting ambush, but finding truth instead. This is what your father was working on when he died. Stone pointed at a folder marked Crawford Construction, Safety Violations, 1975 to 1980. 15 projects showing patterns of negligence, bribes paid to inspectors, political pressure applied to silence complaints. Your father documented all of it. He was 3 days from delivering this to state authorities when his truck went off Route 16. Emma opened the folder, hands trembling as she saw her father's handwriting on notes and documents. This is his writing, his analysis, his investigation. He was meticulous. Stone pulled out more files. He interviewed witnesses, photographed defective work, gathered expert testimony from engineers willing to risk Crawford's anger. Everything needed for a criminal prosecution was in these files. Then David died and the files disappeared from his office. Sheriff Morris claimed they were never found, but your father had made copies. He gave them to me 2 days before the accident, told me if anything happened to him, I should finish what he started. You've had this for 7 years? Emma's voice carried accusation. Why didn't you do something? I tried. Stone met her eyes without flinching. I took the files to 3 different law enforcement agencies. County sheriff dismissed it as conspiracy theory. State police said insufficient evidence for murder charge. FBI said municipal corruption wasn't federal jurisdiction unless we could prove interstate commerce violations. Every door I knocked on closed in my face because Crawford has connections and power, and I'm just an old Marine with accusations I couldn't prove. But you kept investigating. I never stopped. Stone's hand rested on the table, fingers splayed across documents representing years of work. I added to David's files. I found new witnesses, documented new accidents, traced financial connections Crawford thought he'd hidden. I built a case that should bring him down. But I was missing the one thing that would make authorities pay attention: a victim willing to testify publicly. to put a face and voice to the dry documentation. And you think I'm that victim? I know you are. Stone pulled out the file on Emma's accident. Your crash wasn't random. Route 16 had been identified by state engineers as potentially dangerous due to substandard guardrail installation. There were recommendations for immediate remediation. Crawford was supposed to fix the defects as part of his original contract. He didn't. He took the money allocated for repairs and used it on other projects. 6 months later, you went through that guardrail exactly where it was weakest. Emma stared at photographs of her wrecked car, the failed guardrail, the accident scene that had transformed her life. I remember everything about that night. Every detail is burned into my memory. I wasn't speeding. I wasn't distracted. I was just driving home from gymnastics practice, the same route I'd taken hundreds of times. The car started sliding and I corrected, but then the wheel jerked hard left like I'd hit something. I went through the guardrail before I could react. You hit a nail strip, Ghost stepped forward, placing an evidence bag on the table. We found fragments embedded in your tire treads. Military-grade caltrops designed to puncture tires and cause loss of control. Someone placed them in your lane at precisely the point where the guardrail was weakest. Emma looked up sharply. You're saying someone tried to murder me specifically? We're saying someone created a death trap and you triggered it. Stone's voice remained steady. Whether you were the intended target or just unlucky, we haven't determined. But given that you're David Brooks' daughter, given that Crawford knew about your father's investigation, given the timing 2 years after David's death, I believe you were targeted. Crawford probably thought you'd die like your father did. Your survival was the first thing that didn't go according to his plan. The implications settled over Emma like a physical weight. Her hands gripped the wheelchair armrests, knuckles white with tension. Martinez approached quietly, offering a glass of water that Emma accepted with a nod of thanks. The simple kindness seemed to ground her, pulling her back from the edge of panic. What happens now? She drank the water, using the moment to compose herself. You've got all this evidence. You've got me willing to testify. What's the tactical plan? Stone appreciated her military phrasing, David's influence showing through even in crisis. We take this to the state attorney general and the federal prosecutor simultaneously. We bypass local jurisdiction entirely. We bring media attention to force action, and we protect you and your mother until Crawford and his assets are neutralized. His assets meaning Vincent Cross. Emma wasn't asking a question. Cross is the immediate threat. Stone pulled out a photograph of a lean man in his 50s, military-bearing evident despite civilian clothes. Former Marine Scout sniper. Highly skilled, extremely dangerous. We know Crawford has activated him because our sources picked up communication this morning. Cross's standard fee is $25,000 for intimidation, $50,000 for permanent solutions. Crawford has the money and the motivation. So you're expecting Cross to try killing me? Emma's voice remained remarkably calm. And your plan is to stop him. Our plan is to make you an unacceptable target. Stone gestured at the assembled veterans. You're under the protection of the Iron Veterans now. That means 42 combat veterans with military training and a willingness to use violence in defense of our own. Cross is good. Oita is good, but he's one man. We're a coordinated unit with overlapping security, communication protocols, and the home field advantage. What if he doesn't care about the odds? What if he just comes anyway? Then we kill him. Stone's bluntness was tactical. Emma needed to understand the stakes without euphemism. This isn't law enforcement, Miss Brooks. We're not trying to arrest Cross or bring him to trial. If he attempts violence against you, we will end his threat permanently. That's the code. We protect our own by any means necessary. Emma absorbed this, her expression unreadable. After a long moment, she nodded. Okay, what do you need from me? Your testimony. Stone pulled out a legal pad. Everything you remember about your accident, everything your father told you about his work, any threats or intimidation you experienced. We're building a narrative that prosecutors can't ignore, and media will amplify. Your father started this fight. You're going to finish it. And if Crawford comes after my mother? DeRegea spoke up. I've already arranged security at the hospital. 3 of our members have medical backgrounds. They'll be on the floor where your mother works, posing as patients or visitors. She won't be alone and vulnerable. Emma looked around the clubhouse, taking in the faces of men who had committed to protecting her, risking their lives for a girl most of them had never met. Why? Why do you care this much? Because your father saved my life. Stone's voice carried the weight of decades. Because brotherhood means finishing what our fallen brothers started. Because we're old men who spent our youth fighting for principles that this country sometimes forgets. And because seeing Crawford walk free while David rots in the ground is an insult to everything we fought for. Several veterans nodded, Ghost adding, "We've buried too many brothers, Emma. Sometimes they died in combat, serving their country. Sometimes they died in accidents that weren't accidents, victims of corruption we couldn't stop. Your father was one of ours. That makes you one of ours. And we don't abandon family." The emotion in the room was palpable. Decades of grief and frustration channeled into this moment. Emma's eyes gleamed with tears, but her voice remained steady. "Then let's get started. Tell me everything you need." For the next 2 hours, Stone walked Emma through the evidence in exhaustive detail. Financial records showing Crawford's shell companies and offshore accounts, engineering reports documenting construction defects, witness statements from families of other victims. The pattern was undeniable. Richard Crawford had built his wealth by cutting corners that killed people, and he had maintained his freedom by bribing officials and eliminating threats. Emma asked sharp questions, her artist's eye catching details others might miss, her intelligence evident in how quickly she grasped complex financial schemes. She took notes in a sketchbook, occasionally drawing quick portraits of the men as they talked, capturing their faces with economical lines. "You draw like your father," Torres observed, leaning over to see her work. Emma looked up surprised. "Dad drew?" "Constantly." Stone pulled a folder from the filing cabinet, this one labeled Personal David Brooks. Inside were sketches David had made during slow moments in Korea and Vietnam. Landscapes, fellow soldiers, equipment, moments of beauty captured amid horror. "He had your talent. Maybe you inherited it." Emma studied her father's drawings with wonder, seeing a side of him she had never known. "These are beautiful. Why didn't he ever show me? Maybe he wanted you to find your own voice as an artist." Stone returned the folder to the cabinet. "He was always talking about you, showing us your school projects, bragging about your gymnastics medals. He saw you as your own person, not just a reflection of him." The afternoon stretched toward evening, light slanting through the clubhouse windows and golden bars. Veterans rotated through security positions, maintaining vigilance, while Emma's testimony was recorded on video camera. Stone had brought in a lawyer friend, Marcus Webb, another Vietnam veteran who specialized in criminal defense, to ensure everything was documented properly. By 1800 hours, they had 5 hours of testimony on tape, 300 pages of supporting documents organized into binders, and a strategy for approaching state and federal authorities. Emma was exhausted but grimly satisfied, understanding that she had taken the first real steps toward justice for her father. Stone's phone rang, Torres calling from his surveillance position near Crawford's office. "Marcus, we've got movement. Crawford just left his office with Sheriff Morris and 2 other men I don't recognize. They're heading toward the courthouse." "What's at the courthouse this time of day?" Stone checked his watch. "Emergency judicial review." Torres' voice was tight. "I've got a source in the clerk's office. Crawford's filing for a restraining order against the Iron Veterans. Claims we threatened his son, stalked Emma Brooks, and represent an imminent danger to public safety." Stone absorbed this, recognizing Crawford's tactical skill. A restraining order would make any contact with Emma illegal, allowing Crawford to use law enforcement as a weapon while claiming victim status. Smart move from a man who understood how to manipulate systems. "How long until it's granted?" "Judge Palmer is on duty." Torres spat the name like a curse. "Palmer owes Crawford for campaign contributions. I give it 30 minutes before he signs whatever Crawford puts in front of him." Stone turned to Reynolds. "Get me Lieutenant Sarah Chen at State Police. We're accelerating the timeline. We go public tonight instead of waiting until morning." Reynolds was already dialing, phone pressed to his ear. "Chen's a friend, but she can't move without evidence in hand. We'll deliver it personally." Stone began gathering the evidence binders. "Ghost, prep the van." Emma, you're coming with me to state police headquarters in Harrisburg. We're putting this in official hands before Crawford can use legal maneuvering to shut us down. Emma's fatigue was visible, but her determination remained. Let's go. The next hour was controlled chaos as the Iron veterans mobilized for the most critical phase of their operation. Emma's testimony and supporting evidence was loaded into an unmarked van. 6 veterans prepared to make the drive to Harrisburg as security detail. DeRay Reyes called Patricia Brooks to explain that her daughter would be under state police protection by nightfall. Stone strapped on body armor for the first time in 15 years, the weight familiar and grounding. Ghost did the same, both men recognizing that Crawford's response to their move could include violence. Vincent Cross was still unaccounted for, a threat that could materialize anywhere. At 1847 hours, the convoy departed, the van carrying Emma and the evidence, surrounded by 6 motorcycles in protective formation. Stone rode lead, Ghost took rear guard, and 4 others filled flanking positions. They looked like a motorcycle gang transporting contraband, which technically they were. Evidence obtained through questionably legal means, testimony that would destroy a powerful man's career. The drive to Harrisburg would take 90 minutes. Every mile was calculated risk. Every mile brought them closer to placing Emma in the evidence beyond Crawford's reach. Stone's radio crackled with continuous updates from the security team, each veteran calling out landmarks and potential threats as they passed. Route 16 appeared ahead, the same road where David and Emma had both nearly died. Stone felt his chest tighten as they approached the curb where David's truck had crashed. A small memorial stood at the roadside, flowers and a cross that Patricia maintained, marking the spot where David Brooks had been murdered. Emma's voice came through Stone's earpiece, linked to the van's communication system. Is this where it happened? Where Dad died? Yes. Stone didn't slow, maintaining speed and formation. The curve looks gentle, but it's deceptive. In rain or ice, it's treacherous. Your father knew that. He'd driven it 1,000 times. He didn't lose control. He was forced off the road. Emma was quiet for a moment. Will you stop? On the way back? I'd like to see it properly. We'll stop, Stone promised. After we've delivered you and the evidence to state police. After you're safe. Then we'll stop and you can say whatever you need to say to your father. The convoy continued, passing the accident site, leaving Millbrook's boundaries and entering the broader Pennsylvania landscape. Fields and forests replaced suburban developments in Owen. The October sun sank toward the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and red. Stone's phone vibrated, a text from Torres. Restraining order granted. Iron veterans prohibited from contact with Emma Brooks or Crawford family. Violation carries immediate arrest. Effective in 30 minutes when sheriff serves notice. Stone showed the text to Ghost, who wrote alongside. They're trying to separate us from Emma, using law as a weapon. Oh, they're 30 minutes too late. Ghost's voice carried grim satisfaction. We'll have her in state police custody before Morris can serve papers, unless Crawford's already called ahead. Stone considered the possibilities. If Crawford has connections in Harrisburg, he might have state police waiting to arrest us the moment we arrive. Then we don't go to the main entrance. Ghost pulled out a phone. I know a guy, Lieutenant Chen's partner. He can meet us at a side entrance, take custody of Emma and the evidence quietly. Do it. Stone accelerated slightly, the convoy matching his speed. We're in the endgame now. Crawford knows we're moving against him. He'll use every resource to stop us. The next 40 miles passed in tense silence, each veteran scanning for threats. Every vehicle that appeared in mirrors assessed as potential danger. But the highway remained clear, traffic normal for a Tuesday evening, no obvious tail, no attempted interdiction. Harrisburg appeared on the horizon, the state capitol's buildings visible against the darkening sky. The convoy took the exit for Route 322, heading toward the state police headquarters located on the city's outskirts. Stone's phone rang, Lieutenant Chen calling directly. Colonel Stone, I understand you're inbound with evidence related to the Crawford investigation. Her voice was professional, carefully neutral. Stone recognized the tone, someone speaking on a recorded line, choosing words that wouldn't compromise her position. Affirmative. ETA 20 minutes. We're requesting protective custody for a witness in secure receipt of evidence. I'll have officers waiting at the north entrance. Chen paused. Colonel, I should inform you that we've received communication from Millbrook Sheriff's Department regarding a restraining order. The order isn't valid until served, which hasn't happened. Stone kept his voice level. And even if it were, placing a witness under state protection supersedes local civil orders. Agreed. But be aware this is going to get complicated. Crawford has already called my captain. There's political pressure being applied. Understood. Stone saw the state police headquarters ahead, a modern brick building with marked cruisers parked in formation. Get the witness secured first. Everything else is secondary. The convoy pulled into the parking lot, motorcycles forming a protective ring around the van. Lieutenant Sarah Chen emerged from the building with 4 uniformed troopers, all of them carrying the alert readiness of professionals expecting trouble. Chen was 42, a 20-year veteran with a reputation for integrity that made her simultaneously respected and marginalized. She had worked with Stone on 2 previous cases, both times pushing the boundaries of jurisdictional authority to pursue justice when local agencies were compromised. Colonel, Chen's handshake was firm. This better be as solid as you claimed. It is. Stone opened the van's rear door, helping Emma out and into her wheelchair. Lieutenant Chen, this is Emma Brooks. Her father was Master Sergeant David Brooks, USMC. He was murdered 7 years ago while investigating Richard Crawford. 2 years ago, Emma was nearly killed in an accident we believe was attempted murder using the same methodology. Chen's expression shifted as she processed the information. This is the Crawford case? The mayor, former mayor if we do this right. Stone handed her the first evidence binder. Everything we've compiled, financial records, engineering reports, witness statements, Emma's testimony on video, plus documentation of 14 other accidents on Crawford projects showing patterns of negligence and fraud. Chen opened the binder, scanning documents with a practiced eye. How did you obtain financial records? Sources with access who were willing to provide them. Stone met her gaze without flinching. Chain of custody may be questionable on some documents, but the information is verifiable through proper investigative channels. In other words, you committed crimes to get this. Chen closed the binder, but her tone carried understanding rather than condemnation. I conducted an investigation local authorities refused to pursue. Stone gestured at Emma. This girl's father was my brother. He died fighting corruption. I finished what he started. If that makes me a criminal, so be it. Chen looked at Emma, who met her eyes with David Brooks's unwavering gaze. Miss Brooks, do you corroborate Colonel Stone's account? Emma's voice was steady. My father was investigating Mayor Crawford when he died. I was nearly killed on a road Crawford built using defective materials. Colonel Stone has shown me evidence supporting both claims. I'm requesting state protection and asking that you investigate Richard Crawford for murder, attempted murder, fraud, and corruption. Chen's radio crackled, her supervisor calling. She stepped away to answer, speaking in low tones Stone couldn't quite hear. When she returned, her expression was carefully neutral. My captain wants me to take statements and evidence, then release Miss Brooks to her mother's custody pending investigation. He's concerned about jurisdiction and proper procedure. That's not acceptable. Stone's voice hardened. Crawford has already activated a contract killer named Vincent Cross. Emma's safety can't be guaranteed in Millbrook. Do you have evidence of this threat? Chen was in cop mode now, requiring documentation for everything. I have intelligence from sources I can't reveal without compromising them. Stone pulled out his phone, showing texts from Torres and others. But the pattern is consistent with Crawford's past behavior when threatened. Chen read the texts, her frown deepening. This isn't enough for protective custody. I need concrete threat, not vague warnings about someone you claim is a killer. Then hold Emma as a material witness. Ghost stepped forward. You've got testimony about corruption and murder. Keep her in protective custody while you verify the evidence. Chen shook her head. I can't hold a witness without charging her or showing imminent danger. Crawford's lawyers would have her released in an hour. The situation was deteriorating, legal procedure clashing with tactical necessity. Stone could feel Emma's safety slipping away, bureaucracy triumphing over common sense. He was considering options, all of them bad, when Emma spoke up. Lieutenant Chen, I'm 19 years old, legally an adult. I'm requesting police protection based on credible threat to my life. Isn't that sufficient? Chen looked at her with new respect. Technically, yes, if I believe the threat is credible. But my captain disagrees, and he's already getting pressure from above. Then arrest Colonel Stone. Emma's suggestion caught everyone off guard. Charge him with whatever you need to charge him with based on how he obtained evidence. Keep me as a witness to his crimes. That gives you legal grounds to hold me for questioning. Stone started to protest, but Chen raised a hand. That could work. If I charge Stone with unlawful surveillance or evidence tampering, I can hold Miss Brooks for 48 hours to take statements. By then, we'll have verified enough evidence to justify continued protection. I'm not letting Emma take risks to protect me. Stone's voice was firm. You're not letting me do anything. Emma's tone matched his. I'm choosing this. If getting arrested is what it takes to force investigation, then arrest yourself and let's get on with it. Chen looked between them, recognizing the determination in both faces. This is highly irregular, but given the seriousness of the allegations and the political pressure already being applied, irregular might be necessary. She turned to her troopers. Take Colonel Stone into custody on suspicion of unlawful surveillance and tampering with evidence. Miss Brooks comes with us as a material witness. Everything stays quiet, no press, no paperwork until I clear it with the captain. Stone allowed himself to be handcuffed, the cold metal familiar from the few times he had been detained during protests and civil disobedience. Ghost stepped forward, concern evident. Marcus, this wasn't the plan. The plan changed. Stone was already being guided toward a cruiser. You know what to do? Contact Webb, get me legal representation, keep the chapter mobilized, and find Vincent Cross before he finds Emma. As Stone was driven away, he caught a glimpse of Emma being wheeled into the state police headquarters by Chen and two troopers. She looked small and vulnerable, a 19-year-old girl in a wheelchair placing her trust in institutions that had failed her father. But she also looked determined, David Brooks' daughter choosing to fight despite fear. The arrest was theater, Stone knew. Chen would hold him for a few hours, take statements, then release him with warnings about proper procedure. But the theater served its purpose. Emma was now under state protection, the evidence was in official hands, and the investigation into Richard Crawford had begun whether he liked it or not. In the cruiser's back seat, handcuffed and heading toward processing, Marcus Stone allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. David Brooks's mission was nearly complete. The code had been honored, and if Stone spent a night in jail to ensure Emma's safety, that was a price he would pay gladly. Because some things mattered more than pride or freedom. Brotherhood, honor, justice for the fallen. These were the principles Stone had lived by for 7 decades, and they would sustain him through whatever came next. The war for Millbrook's soul had reached its critical phase, and Marcus Stone was exactly where he needed to be, between Emma Brooks and danger, accepting consequences to ensure the mission succeeded. That was the code. That was the way, and he wouldn't have it any other way. Stone's release from state police custody came at 03:42 hours Wednesday morning, Marcus Webb's legal maneuvering having compressed what should have been a 24-hour hold into barely 8 hours. Lieutenant Chen walked him to the exit herself, face carefully neutral, but eyes carrying grudging respect. Your lawyer's expensive and good. She handed Stone his personal effects, wallet, phone, keys. Emma Brooks is being held as material witness for 48 hours. My captain approved protective custody after reviewing the initial evidence. She'll be safe here. What about Crawford's response? Chen glanced toward the overnight supervisor's office, where phones had been ringing constantly since midnight. 3 state senators, 2 congressmen, and the governor's chief of staff have all called demanding we release Miss Brooks and drop the investigation. Crawford's got reach I didn't fully appreciate, but you're holding firm. For now. Chen's voice dropped. But political pressure builds fast. You've got maybe 36 hours before someone above my pay grade shuts this down. Make them count. Ghost was waiting in the parking lot, leaning against his pickup truck, arms crossed. Took you long enough. Had to make it look legitimate. Stone climbed into the passenger seat, every joint protesting the hard bench he had slept on. What's our status? Full mobilization. 40 veterans on active duty, rotating security shifts around the clock. Torres has teams photographing every Crawford construction site in 3 counties. Reynolds is interviewing families of previous accident victims. Martinez got Route 16 accident site cordoned off as crime scene through his state police contacts. Stone absorbed this, mind already organizing information into tactical frameworks. And Cross? No confirmed sighting, but two witnesses report seeing someone matching his description near Emma's house last night around 2100 hours. He's in Millbrook, Marcus, and he's hunting. Then we shift to offense. Stone pulled out his phone, scrolling through contacts. I want Cross found and neutralized before he can make another move. Put word on the street, $10,000 bounty to anyone who provides actionable intelligence on his location. That'll draw attention we don't want. Crawford already knows we're mobilized. Subtlety served its purpose. Now we move fast and aggressive. Stone found the number he wanted, dialing as Ghost navigated Harrisburg's empty streets toward the highway. The call connected on the third ring. This is Stone. I need everything you've got on Vincent Cross. Current vehicle, known associates, safe houses, the whole package. The voice on the other end was female, clipped with professionalism Stone recognized from intelligence officers he had worked with in Vietnam. That's a dangerous ask, Colonel. Cross doesn't appreciate people tracking him. Neither do I. Stone's voice hardened. But I'm tracking him anyway because he's hunting a 19-year-old girl under my protection. You want to help, or do I burn resources I'd rather save? A pause, the sound of typing. Cross drives a gray 1986 Dodge Ram Pennsylvania plates, registered to a shell corporation he uses. Last confirmed location was a motel outside Allentown 48 hours ago. He's got 3 properties in Pennsylvania that we know about. 2 in Philadelphia, 1 in Lancaster. Send me addresses. Stone rattled off his secure number. And if you get fresh intel, I want immediate notification. This is going to cost you favors, Colonel. The girl's father saved my life in Korea. I'll pay whatever it costs. The call ended and Stone leaned back, closing his eyes for a moment. Fatigue pulled at him. 70 years in combat stress compounding. But there would be time to rest after Crawford was finished. David Brooks had carried him 3 miles through frozen hell. Stone could stay awake another few days to protect David's daughter. Ghost's voice pulled him back. Where to? Clubhouse first. I need to brief the full chapter. Stone checked his watch. Then we divide into teams. 3 groups: evidence collection, witness protection, and hunter-killer. We find Cross, we end this threat permanently. Marcus, we're talking about premeditated. I'm talking about combat operations against a hostile who has demonstrated lethal intent. Stone cut him off. Cross chose this fight when he took Crawford's money. We're just providing the response he earned. The drive back to Millbrook took 90 minutes. Dawn breaking over Pennsylvania hills as they crossed into familiar territory. The town looked peaceful in early morning light, few vehicles on streets, businesses still closed. But Stone saw it differently now, recognizing the rot beneath Millbrook's pleasant facade. How many other Crawford projects lurked unseen, waiting to fail and kill? How many officials had taken bribes? How deep did the corruption run? The clubhouse parking lot held 20 motorcycles despite the early hour. Veterans arriving throughout the night as word spread of Stone's arrest and release. Inside, the conference table was covered with new materials. Photographs, documents, maps marked with locations. Torres looked up from paperwork as Stone entered. We've been busy, he gestured at the evidence. 16 Crawford projects documented with photo evidence of safety violations. 9 families willing to provide testimony about accidents or near misses. And Natalie Pierce has a story ready to publish as soon as you give the word. What's she got? Everything. Torres pulled out a draft article, headlines screaming corruption and fraud. Mayor's construction empire built on lies and death, 15 years of negligence, bribery, and possible murder. She's holding publication until you confirm Emma's safe and the evidence is secured with state police. Tell her to run it. Stone moved to the map wall, studying the pins marking Crawford's projects. We're past the point of quiet investigation. Full media exposure forces Crawford to respond publicly instead of through proxies. Reynolds approached, coffee in hand. We've got another problem. Sheriff Morris served restraining orders on 12 chapter members last night. Anyone caught within 500 feet of Crawford, his family, or his properties faces immediate arrest. How many members does that leave unencumbered? Maybe 25 who weren't specifically named. Reynolds sipped coffee. But Morris made it clear he's watching us. Any action we take will be documented and used against us. Then we use members he's not watching. Stone turned to face the assembled veterans. I need volunteers for a high-risk operation. No guarantees of legal protection. Strong possibility of arrest or worse. Anyone not comfortable with that should leave now with my respect and gratitude for what you've already contributed. No one moved. 40 pairs of eyes looked back at Stone with the unwavering commitment he had seen on battlefields decades ago. These were men who had volunteered for war when their country called. A small-town corruption case barely registered compared to what they had already faced. Good. Stone allowed himself a slight smile. Here's the operation. Team Alpha under Torres will continue evidence documentation at Crawford sites. You've got cameras and engineering consultants standing by. I want photo proof of every violation, every defect, every corner Crawford cut. Team Bravo under Reynolds will coordinate witness testimony, get statements on record, notarized, copies to state police and media simultaneously. Team Charlie, that's Ghost, Martinez, and myself, will locate and neutralize Vincent Cross. Dr. Reyes raised her hand. What about Emma's mother? Patricia's still at the hospital and vulnerable. Your Team Delta. Stone nodded at Elena. Take 4 members and establish protective detail around Patricia Brooks. Overt presence. I want Crawford to know Shai's defended. Make him think twice before escalating. And if he escalates anyway, we respond proportionally. Stone's voice was ice. Crawford wants war. We'll give him war. But we fight smart. Everything documented. Everything justifiable as defense. We make him the aggressor in every engagement. The briefing continued for another hour, tactical details refined, communication protocols established, contingency plans developed for multiple scenarios. By 0600 hours, the teams were mobilized and departing, each veteran knowing his role, trusting the others to execute theirs. Stone, Ghost, and Martinez loaded weapons and surveillance equipment into an unmarked van, preparing for the hunt. Finding Cross required patience and resources, but Stone had both. His network of veteran contacts across Pennsylvania was already activating, eyes watching highways and known criminal haunts where contractors like Cross operated. The first break came at 0847 hours, a call from a retired Army sergeant who owned a gun shop in Lancaster. A man matching Cross's description had purchased ammunition an hour ago, paying cash, asking no questions. The transaction was legal, but the timing and quantity, 500 rounds of 9mm hollow point, suggested preparation for sustained engagement. Lancaster was 40 miles south. Stone made the drive in 35 minutes, Ghost riding beside him, Martinez following in his truck. The gun shop sat in a strip mall, owner waiting outside with the nervous energy of someone who had committed to dangerous action. He bought 2 boxes of 9mm and 1 box of .308 rifle rounds. The shop owner was 65, Vietnam vintage with the tattoos and scars to prove it. Paid cash, didn't say much. But I got his plate number when he left. Stone took the information, already calling it into his network. Within minutes, responses flooded back. Cross's truck had been spotted heading north on Route 222, back toward Millbrook. The hunter was returning to his hunting ground. He's going after Emma. Ghost's assessment matched Stone's. Probably thinks she's still at her house. Or he knows she's in state custody and he's planning extraction. Stone accelerated, weaving through Lancaster traffic. Either way, he's making his move. We need to be in position when he does. Martinez's voice crackled through the radio. Marcus, Torres reports Crawford just called emergency town council meeting for 1400 hours today. Claims he has evidence of criminal conspiracy by the Iron Veterans. Let him talk. Stone took the highway on-ramp, engine roaring. While he's performing for counsel, we'll be ending his enforcement arm. The drive back to Millbrook was tense, each mile bringing them closer to confrontations Stone knew was inevitable. Cross was too professional to walk into obvious traps, which meant he would choose time and location for engagement. Stone's advantage was manpower and local knowledge. Cross's advantage was skill and surprise. The question was, which would prove decisive? At 10:34 hours, Stone's phone buzzed. Torres sending photos from a Crawford construction site. The images showed bridge supports with visible cracks, rebar exposed through crumbling concrete, weight load signs posted at limits the actual structure couldn't support, documentation of criminal negligence so blatant it turned Stone's stomach. How many people cross that bridge daily? He showed the photos to Ghost. Couple hundred at least. It's the main route between Millbrook and the industrial park. Ghost's expression was grim. If that fails during rush hour, it won't. Stone forwarded the photos to Lieutenant Chen with a text. Immediate safety hazard. Crawford Construction Bridge on Route 41. Recommend closure pending inspection. Within minutes, Chen responded. State engineers dispatched. Bridge closed effective immediately. One threat neutralized. But Crawford had built hundreds of projects over 15 years. How many other disasters waited to happen? At 11:47 hours, the brake Stone needed arrived. Cross's truck spotted parked behind an abandoned warehouse on Millbrook's industrial edge. The location was tactically sound. Multiple exits, clear sight lines, isolated from witnesses. Exactly where a professional would stage before an operation. Stone assembled his team 3 blocks away, 12 veterans converging from different directions. Ghost coordinated movement through radio, directing veterans into positions surrounding the warehouse. Martinez climbed to a rooftop with a scoped hunting rifle, establishing overwatch. Stone approached from the front with 4 others, weapons concealed but ready. The warehouse was exactly what it appeared. Rusted metal walls, broken windows, weeds growing through cracked pavement. But Cross's truck sat behind it, engine cold, suggesting he had been here for hours, planning, preparing, waiting for the moment to strike. Stone's hand signals directed 2 veterans around each side while he approached the main entrance. The door hung loose on broken hinges, interior dark and echoing. Every instinct screamed ambush, decades of combat experience recognizing the setup. But Cross was inside, and that made the risk acceptable. Vincent Cross, Stone's voice carried through the empty space. This is Marcus Stone, Iron Veterans. We need to talk. Silence answered, broken only by wind through broken windows. Then a voice from the shadows, calm and professional. Colonel Stone, I've heard of you. Korea, right? Chosen Reservoir? I was there. Stone moved carefully, eyes adjusting to darkness. You served too. Marine Scout Sniper. Silver Star. You were a good Marine once before I learned what it paid. Cross remained invisible, voice echoing. You know why I'm here, and you know I'll complete my contract. Your contract is against a 19-year-old girl in a wheelchair. Stone edged deeper into the warehouse. That's not combat. That's murder. It's business. No emotion in Cross's voice. Crawford pays, I deliver. Simple economics. Crawford killed that girl's father 7 years ago. Did you do that job too? A pause, then, maybe. They all run together after a while. Rage flashed through Stone, but discipline held. David Brooks was a Marine. Master Sergeant. He saved lives in 3 wars. You killed a brother. I've killed lots of brothers. Cross's voice shifted location, moving through the warehouse. Most of them deserved it more than Brooks. But that doesn't change the contract. Stone gestured, and his veterans began closing the perimeter, boxing Cross into a smaller area. What would it take to void the contract? More money than you have. And my reputation if I don't deliver. Cross laughed, the sound harsh. Besides, I looked into this. Brooks was building a case that could bring down a dozen officials. He was dangerous to a lot of people, not just Crawford. Killing him was practically a public service. You really believe that? Stone's voice carried genuine surprise. I believe money is the only truth that matters. Everything else is just stories people tell themselves to feel better about the violence they commit. At least I'm honest about it. The conversation was positioning, each man maneuvering while talking. Stone could feel his veterans tightening the net. Ghost coordinating movement through subtle signals. Cross was good, but he was alone against 12 combat veterans. The math was inevitable. I'm going to give you one chance. Stone stopped moving, letting his voice pin Cross's location. Walk away, leave Pennsylvania. Never take another contract against anyone associated with the Iron Veterans. Do that and you live. And if I refuse, then we end this here. Stone's hand moved to his weapon. You're good, Cross, but you're not good enough to fight your way through a dozen armed Marines and Army veterans who know this ground better than you do. The warehouse fell silent, tension building like pressure before a storm. Then Cross's voice came from a different location entirely, proving he had been moving continuously. You're probably right, but I've got insurance you don't know about. A phone buzzed in Stone's pocket, not his personal cell, but the emergency line only a few people had. He pulled it out, seeing a text message with a photo attachment. The image showed a young girl, maybe 8 years old, tied to a chair in a basement. Her face was bruised and terrified. The accompanying text read, "Back off or she dies." Stone's blood ran cold. Whose daughter? Cross's voice carried bitter satisfaction. Mine. Crawford grabbed her 3 days ago. Said if I don't finish the Brooks job, I never see Melissa again. So you see, Colonel, your threat means nothing. I'm already in hell. Killing Emma Brooks is the only way out. The revelation transformed everything. Cross wasn't just a hired killer pursuing a contract. He was a father whose child was hostage, forced into action by the same man Stone was hunting. The moral calculus shifted, enemy becoming potential ally if the right leverage could be applied. Where's Crawford holding her? Construction headquarters. Basement office Crawford had built special, reinforced walls, security cameras, panic room access. He's got 4 guards rotating shifts. I've been looking for an opening, but Crawford's paranoid. The place is a fortress. Stone made a decision that would either save both girls or doom them. Lower your weapon. We're going to walk out of here together. You help me get your daughter. I help you void the contract without killing anyone. Why would you help me? Cross's suspicion was audible. I murdered your best friend. Because you were right about one thing, money is truth, and I've got more resources than Crawford. Stone holstered his weapon, raising both hands. Plus, you complete this contract, and Crawford still kills your daughter to eliminate witnesses. You know that. He's already demonstrated he can't be trusted. Long silence, cross-weighing options. What's your plan? We hit Crawford's headquarters simultaneously with the town council meeting. While he's performing for cameras, we extract Melissa and secure evidence from his private office. You testify against him, provide details on every contract he hired you for. In exchange, you get immunity and your daughter back. I testify I'm a dead man. Every criminal in Pennsylvania will want revenge. You testify, you go into witness protection with a new identity. Stone was improvising now, but the plan held logic. Federal prosecutors will jump at the chance to flip a contract killer with direct knowledge of organized crime. Your daughter gets a new life away from this. You get a chance at redemption. Redemption. Cross laughed again, but this time the bitterness carried something else. Hope. That's not a word I've heard in 20 years. David Brooks believed in redemption. He believed men could change if given reason to. Stone lowered his hand slowly. I'm giving you reason. Help me finish what David started. Save both our daughters. Make one good choice to balance all the bad ones. Movement in the shadows, Cross emerging into dim light, filtering through broken windows. He was exactly what Stone expected. Lean, hard, eyes that had seen too much death. The weapon in his hands remained pointed down but ready to rise in an instant. You get me my daughter back. I'll give you Crawford and everyone he ever hired. Cross's voice carried finality. But if this is a trap, if anything happens to Melissa, I'll kill everyone you've ever cared about. That's not a threat. That's a promise, understood? Stone extended his hand. Do we have a deal? Cross stared at the offered hand for a long moment. Decades of violence and mistrust, warring with desperate need to save his daughter. Then he reached out, grip firm, sealing an alliance between men who should have been enemies. Deal. Cross holstered his weapon. Now how do we get into a fortified building in broad daylight without getting killed? Stone smiled, cold and predatory. I've got 40 combat veterans who specialize in exactly that kind of problem. And we've got, he checked his watch, 2 hours and 13 minutes before Crawford's council meeting starts. That's plenty of time. The hunt had shifted. Vincent Cross was no longer the prey. Now he was the hunter turned ally, and together they would bring down Richard Crawford's empire from within. The war for Millbrook's soul had just escalated, and the endgame was approaching faster than anyone anticipated. The raid on Crawford Construction Headquarters began at 13:42 hours, 18 minutes before Richard Crawford would stand before the town council to denounce the Iron Veterans as criminals and conspirators. Stone had divided his force into three teams, Ghost leading the extraction unit through the basement to recover Melissa Cross, Reynolds creating a diversion at the front entrance with a fabricated OSHA inspection, and Stone himself penetrating Crawford's private office with Vincent Cross as his guide. The building was exactly what Cross had described, a three-story concrete structure built like a bunker, security cameras covering every approach, reinforced doors at all entries. Crawford had constructed his headquarters with the paranoia of a man who knew enemies would eventually come. But paranoia couldn't account for betrayal from within. Cross bypassed the main security panel using codes he had memorized from previous visits, his fingers moving with the muscle memory of repetition. The panel beeped acceptance, and the side door clicked on open. Stone and Martinez slipped through, weapons drawn, moving with the silent precision of men who had cleared hostile buildings in wars most Americans had forgotten. The basement stairs descended into fluorescent-lit corridors that smelled of concrete and fear. Ghost's voice crackled through Stone's earpiece. In position, 4 guards visible, rotating patrol every 6 minutes. Melissa's location confirmed in northwest cell. Stone checked his watch. 4 minutes until the next patrol rotation. Go on my mark. He moved deeper into the building, Cross leading them through passages the security cameras didn't cover, exploiting blind spots Crawford didn't know existed because he had trusted Cross completely. Crawford's private office occupied the top floor, accessible only by a single elevator requiring biometric authentication. Cross pressed his thumb to the scanner. Crawford had given him access for emergencies, and the elevator hummed upward. 30 seconds of vulnerability, trapped in a metal box, every instinct screaming trap. But the doors opened onto an empty corridor, plush carpet muffling footsteps, original art on walls bought with blood money. The office door was unlocked. Crawford's arrogance assumed no one would dare penetrate this deep into his fortress. Stone pushed it open, Martinez covering their 6, Cross moving to the wall safe hidden behind a painting of Millbrook's town square. Stone swept the office with tactical efficiency, desk drawers, filing cabinets, computer terminals. Everything was too neat, too organized. This wasn't where Crawford kept his real secrets. Those would be in the safe, the one place he controlled absolutely. Cross spun the combination, another code Crawford had provided during their years of collaboration. The heavy door swung open, revealing stacks of documents, cash bundles, and a small metal box. Cross reached for the box, hands steady despite the magnitude of what he was about to do. Inside were recordings, dozens of microcassettes labeled with dates and initials. Crawford's insurance policy against everyone he had corrupted or employed. DB, Oct 1980, EBOM, SEPTA 1985, and MIDE June 1982. Each tape represented a crime, a life destroyed, a family shattered. Cross pulled out the one marked DB, handing it to Stone. This is Crawford ordering your friend's death. My voice is on it too, confirming I'd handle it. Cross's face was stone, but his eyes carried something Stone recognized. Shame. You'll have everything you need for murder charges. Stone pocketed the tape, emotion locked down tight. Ghost's voice cut through. Targets acquired. Melissa is alive but scared. 4 guards neutralized, non-lethal. We're moving to extraction. The pieces were falling into place with military precision. Stone grabbed the entire contents of the safe, stuffing documents and tapes into a duffel bag Martinez had brought. They had maybe 3 minutes before someone noticed the security breach, maybe 5 before Crawford received word his fortress had been penetrated. The elevator descended and they exited through the side door, joining Ghost's team in the parking lot. Melissa Cross was wrapped in a blanket, her father kneeling beside her, hands shaking as he checked her for injuries. The girl was crying but seemed physically unharmed, and the reunion between father and daughter carried an emotional weight that transcended the criminal circumstances. We need to move. Stone was already scanning for threats. Crawford will know within minutes. Let him know. Cross stood, Melissa in his arms despite her 8-year-old size. I'm done running, done hiding, done letting men like Crawford control my life through fear. The convoy of vehicles, 2 vans and 4 motorcycles, pulled onto the highway heading towards state police headquarters in Harrisburg. Stone had already called Lieutenant Chen, informing her that he had Crawford's personal records, recordings of criminal conspiracy, and a witness willing to testify to multiple murders. Chen's response had been immediate. Bring everything. I'll have federal prosecutors waiting. The drive took 70 minutes, everyone watching mirrors for pursuit that never came. Crawford was at town council, performing his indignation before cameras, unaware his entire criminal empire was being delivered to law enforcement. The irony satisfied something dark in Stone's chest. State Police headquarters was ready for them. Chen had assembled a team of investigators, federal prosecutors from the Organized Crime Division, and enough security to protect witnesses from any retaliation. Vincent Cross carried his daughter into the building, both of them disappearing into protective custody that would last months. Stone handed over the duffel bag, watching Chen's expression shift from professional skepticism to genuine shock as she examined the contents. This is, she trailed off, pulling out tape after tape. Colonel, do you understand what you've given us? This implicates everyone. Judges, state senators, police chiefs across 3 counties. David Brooks died trying to expose this. Stone's voice was flat. His daughter was crippled by it. 15 other families lost loved ones. Yes, I understand exactly what I've given you. Now use it. The federal prosecutor, a woman in her 40s named Janet Holloway, stepped forward. We'll need your testimony, Colonel. Everything about how you obtain this evidence. It may not be admissible due to chain of custody issues, but it gives us roadmaps for legitimate investigation. You'll have my full cooperation. Stone pulled out the DB tape, but I want you to listen to this one first. They played it in Chen's office, the sound quality surprisingly clear for a recording made 7 years ago. Crawford's voice was instantly recognizable, discussing the Brooks problem with clinical detachment. Vincent Cross's responses were terse, professional, confirming he understood the target and methodology. The entire conversation lasted 4 minutes, ending with Crawford saying, "Make it look natural, an accident. We can't have martyrs." Chen's face had gone pale. That's a murder conspiracy recording. Clear as day. And you've got the killer willing to testify he carried out the order. Holloway was already making notes, plus financial records showing payment, plus pattern evidence of similar contracts. This isn't just murder. This is RICO, organized criminal enterprise. How long until arrest warrants? Stone needed timeline, needed to know when Emma would finally be safe. Holloway checked her watch. Crawford's probably still at town council. I can have warrants signed within the hour, arrest teams deployed within 2. She looked at Stone directly. This is over, Colonel. You won. Crawford's going to federal prison for the rest of his life. The words should have brought satisfaction, but Stone felt only emptiness. Victory without David Brooks to share it was hollow. The mission was complete, but the brother who started it remained dead. Buried in Millbrook Cemetery, under a headstone that said nothing about murder. Stone's phone buzzed. Torres sending video feed from the town council meeting. Crawford stood at the podium, face red with performative outrage, gesturing dramatically as he denounced the Iron Veterans as a criminal organization engaged in harassment, stalking, and conspiracy. The council members looked uncertain, clearly uncomfortable with the spectacle, but unwilling to challenge the mayor directly. Then Lieutenant Chen walked through the chamber doors, 4 state troopers behind her, federal warrant in hand. The video captured Crawford's expression shifting from righteous anger to animal panic as he understood what was happening. He actually tried to run, pushing past council members toward a side exit, but troopers were already there. They took him down hard, face first onto the floor, hands cuffed behind his back, while cameras recorded every second. The audio picked up Crawford screaming, "You can't do this! I'm the mayor! I have rights!" Chen's response was cold and professional. Richard Crawford, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, racketeering, fraud, bribery, and corruption. You have the right to remain silent. Stone watched the video loop 3 times, the catharsis he expected never quite arriving. Justice looked messy and chaotic, not the clean resolution war movies promised. But it was real, and it would hold up in court, and that was enough. 6 months later, Stone stood in federal court watching Richard Crawford receive a sentence of 35 years without parole. The trial had been exhaustive, evidence painstakingly presented, witnesses testifying to decades of corruption. Vincent Cross had spent 4 days on the stand detailing 12 contracts he had fulfilled for Crawford, including David Brooks's murder. The jury deliberated 90 minutes before returning guilty verdicts on all counts. Emma Brooks sat in the gallery beside Stone, her wheelchair positioned in the accessible seating area. She had testified for 2 days, describing her accident and her father's investigation with calm precision that devastated Crawford's defense. The lawyer had tried attacking her credibility, suggesting her disability clouded her judgment, but Emma's intelligence and composure destroyed every insinuation. When the judge pronounced sentence, Emma reached over and took Stone's hand. Her grip was strong, artist's fingers calloused from drawing and sculpture, and Stone felt David's presence in the gesture. "We did it." Her voice was barely a whisper. "Dad would be proud. He is proud." Stone squeezed back. "Wherever he is, he's proud." The memorial unveiling happened on Memorial Day, 18 months after Crawford's arrest. Millbrook's town square had been transformed. New bronze statue depicting Master Sergeant David Brooks in dress uniform, hand extended in gesture of assistance, representing his life spent helping others. Surrounding plaques listed the names of 15 people killed or injured by Crawford's negligence, ensuring their stories would never be forgotten. Stone stood at attention as the Marine Honor Guard performed the flag ceremony, triangle of fabric presented to Patricia Brooks with solemn precision. Emma sat beside her mother, both women crying openly, grief and relief mingling after years of seeking answers. The crowd numbered in the hundreds, veterans from across Pennsylvania, families of Crawford's victims, Millbrook residents finally understanding the corruption that had festered in their town. Stone's speech was brief. "David Brooks saved my life in Korea. He spent the next 30 years saving others. As a Marine, as a husband, as a father, as a friend. Richard Crawford killed him because David threatened to expose corruption. But David's mission didn't die with him. His daughter and his brothers finished what he started." This memorial stands as a reminder that one person's courage can change everything. That brotherhood transcends death. That justice may be delayed, but it's never denied if good people refuse to quit. The Iron veterans fired a 21-gun salute, the sharp cracks echoing across the square. Then they mounted their motorcycles and circled the memorial 3 times, engines revving in tribute, the missing man formation leaving an empty space where David would have ridden. Ghost placed David's original Iron Veterans patch at the statue's base, the leather worn and faded, but the patch intact. Emma wheeled herself to the memorial afterward, placing a hand on the bronze boot, her other hand holding a sketchbook. She had drawn this moment months ago, knowing it would come, capturing her father's face from memory and photographs. The drawing showed David young and strong, the warrior before age and death diminished him. She left the sketch at the statue's base, a daughter's tribute to a father she was still discovering. 2 years after Crawford's conviction, Stone called a chapter meeting to announce his retirement as president. He was 72 now, the years and stress beginning to show in ways he could no longer ignore. Ghost Anderson would take over leadership, bringing fresh energy and tactical skill while maintaining the traditions that define the Iron Veterans. "I've led this chapter for 25 years. Stone's voice carried through the clubhouse one final time as president. "We've buried too many brothers. We've fought battles the public never sees. But we've stayed true to our code. Protect the vulnerable, honor the fallen, finish what brothers started." The Brooks mission proved we still matter. We're not just old men reliving glory. We're guardians standing between predators and prey. Ghost accepted the presidency with characteristic brevity. "Marcus taught us that retirement doesn't mean surrender. It means mission complete. He's earned rest. But knowing him, he'll be back here tomorrow morning checking on things." Laughter filled the room, warm and genuine. Stone smiled, feeling lighter than he had in years. "Actually, I'll be at the Brooks Advocacy Center. Emma's asked me to serve on the board. Seems she thinks old warriors have something to contribute to helping accident victims seek justice." The center had opened a year ago, funded by lawsuit settlements against Crawford Construction. Emma served as executive director, using her experience and her father's story to help families navigate the complicated intersection of tragedy and bureaucracy. Tyler Crawford worked there too, having legally changed his name to Tyler Brooks in honor of the man his father had murdered. The gesture had moved Emma to tears and cemented an unlikely friendship between former enemies. Connor Hayes, Jake Turner in his real identity, provided security consulting, his ranger training ensuring the center's clients remained safe from retaliation. Elena Reyes offered medical consulting, helping families understand injury documentation. The Iron Veterans provided volunteer support, 40 brothers who had found new purpose in continuing David's work. Stone visited the cemetery every week, sitting beside David's grave for quiet conversations no one else heard. The headstone had been replaced with new granite listing David's service record and adding a simple inscription, "Warrior, father, brother, his mission lives on." On a cool October afternoon, 3 years after Crawford's arrest, Stone sat in his usual spot beside the grave when Emma arrived unexpectedly. She navigated the cemetery path with practiced ease, wheelchair handling uneven ground that would have defeated lesser designs. "Didn't expect to see you here, Colonel." She positioned herself beside Stone's portable stool. "Your father and I have standing weekly meetings. He's still not a great conversationalist, but he listens well." Emma smiled, pulling out her sketchbook. "I come every Sunday. Guess I picked the right day this week." They sat in comfortable silence, shared grief creating understanding that required no words. Finally, Emma spoke. "I wanted to tell you something. The center got a major grant, state funding. We're expanding across Pennsylvania, maybe beyond. David would be proud." Stone's hand rested on the headstone. "You've built something that helps people. That's all he ever wanted. I had good teachers." Emma's eyes found Stone's. "You, Ghost, Connor, the Brotherhood. You showed me what my father stood for. We showed you what you already had inside." Stone's voice was gentle. "We just gave you permission to use it." Emma hesitated, then pulled out a folder. "There's something else. A case. Construction fraud. Philadelphia. 12 companies operating as network. They're calling the person running it the architect. Sound familiar?" Stone's expression hardened. Vincent mentioned that name before he entered witness protection. "I've been investigating quietly." Emma spread documents across her lap. "It's bigger than Crawford. Much bigger. Federal authorities know about it, but prosecution is complicated by political connections. I can't do this alone." Stone looked at David's grave, then at Emma, seeing the same fire that had driven her father to fight corruption despite knowing the cost. "Emma, I'm 72. I've earned retirement. I know, but there are families suffering like mine did, and they don't have Iron Veterans to help them." The manipulation was transparent and effective. Stone felt the pull of unfinished business, the warrior's curse that made retirement impossible when battles remained. "You're using an old man's guilt against him." Emma smiled. "Is it working?" Stone sighed, the sound carrying resignation and satisfaction in equal measure. "Damn it, yes. But I'm not leading this. Ghost is president. I'm just consulting. Just consulting." "Got it." Emma's eyes sparkled with David's mischief. "Monday, clubhouse. 0900 hours. Bring coffee." Stone stood, joints protesting, and saluted David's grave with parade ground precision. The gesture was farewell and promise combined. "Rest easy, brother. We'll take it from here." He and Emma left together, his steady pace matching her wheelchair's speed. Behind them, the cemetery settled into autumn quiet, leaves drifting across marble and grass. David Brooks's grave stood among hundreds of others, veterans from every American conflict, men and women who had served and sacrificed. But David's mission was different. His mission was still active, carried forward by his daughter and his brothers, expanding to new battles against new corruption. The code demanded nothing less. Finish what brothers start. Protect those who need protecting. Never surrender to evil just because fighting is hard. Stone's motorcycle started with its familiar roar, Emma's accessible van purring beside it. They pulled onto the cemetery road together, headed toward the clubhouse and planning sessions and new operations against new enemies. The architect was out there somewhere, destroying lives, profiting from suffering. Stone was too old for this. His back hurt, his knees ached. Doctors said he should retire completely. But he was Iron Veterans. The code didn't care about age or pain. The code cared about mission completion and brotherhood and standing against darkness no matter the cost. Ghost was right. Stone wasn't retired. He was redeployed. And this time, Emma Brooks rode beside him, not as someone to protect, but as a fellow warrior carrying her father's legacy forward. The war for justice never ended. It just found new soldiers willing to fight it. And as long as the Iron Veterans existed, as long as men and women remembered what honor demanded, that war would continue until the last veteran took the last ride. Stone gunned the engine, feeling alive in ways retirement could never provide. David's mission was complete. Emma's mission was beginning. And Marcus Stone's mission, the one he had carried since Chosin Reservoir, continued unchanged. Protect the innocent, honor the fallen, finish what brothers start, because that was the code. That was the way, and it would never change. The road ahead stretched into autumn afternoon, golden light painting Pennsylvania hills in shades of amber and rust. Stone accelerated, Emma keeping pace. Two generations of warriors united by blood they hadn't shed and bonds they hadn't chosen but honored anyway. Behind them in the cemetery, David Brooks's grave stood silent witness to the legacy that would never die as long as people remembered that courage, once ignited, could burn across generations. The end was just another beginning. The mission was never complete, and the Iron Veterans would ride until the last engine fell silent and the last brother went home. That was the promise. That was the code. That was enough.